Hello and welcome to Jinnah Institute's latest webinar, part of our ongoing spotlight series on the India-Pakistan cross-border conflict that erupted last month. My name is Ammara Durrani. I'm Honorary Senior Fellow at the Institute. Our discussion today is on a fine balance, Russia and China's new stake in South Asia. The fateful US exit from Afghanistan in 2021 marked the end of another American forever war in Asia. It also brought back into focus the long-standing continental balance of power shared between Russia and China. This balance of power is now being tested on long-standing regional security issues of Iran and Afghanistan, as well as on old cross-border conflicts between China, India, and India-Pakistan. We had the Galwan Valley conflict between China and India in 2020-2021, and now this year, the Pahalgam war between India and Pakistan. Today, we'll look at how these cross-border competitions are stress testing high-powered Russian and Chinese friendship in the region. What are the emerging new fault lines of superpower competition and cooperation, including the United States, and what it means for the India-Pakistan status quo? Our very distinguished speakers today include Senator Mushahid Hussain Syed, leading politician, a journalist, and intellectual in Pakistan, former Federal Minister for Information, Communications, and also serving parliamentary portfolios on defense and Kashmir. He's a committed proponent of Pakistan's relations with China, Central Asia, and Russia. He's chairman of the Islamabad-based China-Pakistan Institute, has written several books on politics and governance. A Fulbright scholar, he was educated at Georgetown University and Forman Christian College, Lahore. Welcome, Senator Mushahid Hussain Syed.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Also, we have Ambassador retired Naghmana Hashmi, who served the Pakistan Foreign Service for more than 3 decades. She held key positions including Pakistan's ambassador to China, European Union, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Ireland. A graduate of FG College Rawalpindi, she's a prolific writer and public speaker and a leading light on China-Pakistan relations. Ambassador Naghmana, let me start with you. By bringing in the China advantage, as a lot of analysts in Pakistan have termed during the Pahalgam crisis. Jury is still out on who was able to establish military superiority during the China-India face-off in Galwan. In contrast, in Pahalgam, China's JF-17 Thunder jets clearly demonstrated China's technological superiority in the region. Now, because India has held in abeyance the Indus Water Treaty, it is making a lot of fuss about China's alleged water bomb. In your view, what are the key factors in the China-India configuration that have an advantage for Pakistan? Madam.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. This is my first webinar with the Jinnah Institute, so I'm delighted to be part of this. And it's always an honor to be in a discussion or a webinar with Senator Mushahid Hussain. So as far as your question is concerned, I think the Pahalgam incident has helped to clear the fog on a number of perceptions. I think the first misperception that was prevailing in the world, particularly in the West, was about the capacity and willingness of China to really stand up and show its strength when push comes to shove in this region. And we saw that perception of China still being far behind technologically, particularly in the defense domain, was instantly it evaporated, because this was the first time that Chinese technology, not only its military technology, but also its cyber technology, its AI technology, its communications technology, was all tested in a real arena. And it was pitched against the best technology that was available to the West, and also jointly, with the S-400s of the Russians, which the Indians have a lot of Russian technology. So I think that came as a big surprise, how it went over and above the expectations of the West. And I think that put into action a number of things. Firstly, I think a sobriety has prevailed, that you know we need to watch out where China is going, and that China may not just be an easy game. And I think that is why it is very important that China, by displaying this, it was just uh, under the wraps, but now that capacity and that capability has been displayed for everybody to see, and therefore that puts China in a totally different light as far as its technological and military superiority is concerned. Secondly, there were a lot of sort of, again, a misperception, but it was also being deliberately played upon, that Pakistan-China relationship may not stand the test of time, particularly with all the negative narratives that were being played out by the West, particularly regarding CPAC and terrorism and other issues. I think that has also come out in the open now, that irrespective of how much pressure, whether the Indians or the West puts on this relationship, this is a long-term strategic relationship, and that this relationship is only going to grow from strength to strength, and it has not been dented by anybody. Both these things, I think, has come as a wake-up call for the Indians too, because Indians, they tried. I think it was on the irking of or the encouragement of the West, when they tried their luck in Dolkam and the Galwan area, and we saw what happened there. I was ambassador there, so I know firsthand exactly how it unfolded, and what happened. And if the Chinese, it was the Chinese that showed restraint. Otherwise, it would have gone. It would have become much uglier. So now India is forced to rethink. China, there was never any doubt that militarily or economically or in any other way, Chinese never considered India much of a competition. Economically, yes, there is a lot of trade, but that is a shock that I think the Chinese can withstand. So now the Pahalgam incident has actually put China in a very strong position in Eurasia and also in South Asia for the moment.
Mushahid Saab, Madam Naghmana has made a very good point about the shift in perceptions, old perceptions vis-a-vis China, where China is now more confident, clearly, technologically, more communication savvy, etc. I want to bring you in, sir, on the question of Russia and whether
No, I just want
we're
to
seeing
add
any
one
change in
sentence.
whether we are seeing any change in perceptions vis-a-vis Russia. You were in Moscow last week, sir. You met the Russian foreign minister. You're vocal about what you call Russia's positive neutrality. But I mean, there are permanent incentives in the Russia India bilateral relationship that Pakistan cannot ignore. When Pahalgam happened, the Russian president called the Indian prime minister and assured of unequal support on the question of terrorism. Of course, there is that big military industrial relationship between the two countries. What makes you think that Russia may be changing its outlook towards old friend India, especially when it comes to Pakistan? Mushahid Saab.
Thank you so much. And first of all, I would like to thank the Jinnah Institute for taking a very timely initiative, because the geopolitical landscape of our region is shifting, and it's shifting big time. And I saw it firsthand during my last week's visit, first to Beijing and then to Moscow, which you just mentioned. Secondly, I would fully endorse what Ambassador Naghmana Hashmi has said about misperceptions being rectified in the course of last month's momentous events. I think let me just clarify. You mentioned about Putin's call to Modi. Every country, including Pakistan, condemned the terrorism which took place on 22nd of April. That condemnation of terrorism is separate from supporting India in the conflict against Pakistan. So I think that should be clarified. Uh, I felt that there has been quite a major shift in Russian attitudes. And let me tell you in what ways. Number one, they are seeing Pakistan through Indian lenses anymore. Previously, their view of South Asia was colored by how Delhi thinks, how Delhi approaches region, including Pakistan. They have de-linked that. They see Pakistan in a different positive light. They are keen and eager to develop that relationship. And there are two reasons for that. One is that Pakistan's performance in the recent conflict with India, that Pakistan has shown that it has the will and capacity to take on India and Indian aggression. And secondly, I think I sensed disillusionment in Moscow and the Russian political establishment about India. And when Mr. Lavrov, I thanked Mr. Lavrov when I met him for Russia's positive neutrality, because it's very interesting they did not side with India. India was expecting that. No. In fact, all the big three, China, Russia, America, they had a similar position on this issue. China, of course, standing strong with Pakistan, but America and Russia both being neutral, although they are both very close allies of India at different times. Secondly, I think that his speech, he criticized India, for example, saying that we had discussions with our Indian friends that when they were joining the Quad, which is an alliance of America, Australia, Japan, and India, that there were concerns of the Russians. And the Indians told the Russians, this is what Lavrov is saying, that no, this is not about military alliances. This is about trade, economy, and connectivity. But it says that despite those assurances, there were military exercises. So the military dimension is there. And then he also said that the Indo-Pacific strategy, IPL, which Indo-Pacific, the NATO talks about, was specifically meant to drag India, to quote him, against China. So I think that kind of criticism in the face of a strong Indian delegation. I was the only Pakistani invited, but there was about a dozen Indians, including from the ruling BJP parliamentarians. So it was a very clear message that he wanted to convey. And I think that just to take off from what Ambassador Hashmi said, that if there were misperceptions, there was a conventional wisdom about certain things that has been shattered by the events in May. One conventional wisdom, oh, Pakistan-China relations are no longer that robust, no longer that intimate, and there are certain concerns and so forth. That was proven wrong. China stood rock solid with Pakistan. Then there were other concerns about Pakistan, that Pakistan is a weak country. Pakistan cannot stand up to Indian aggression. India will be bullying Pakistan. That was proven out to be wrong. And then most of the experts were saying, and I was not one of them, I always maintain that this area is very important. They said South Asia no longer matters for the Americans. South Asia is now on the back burner. The US is no longer interested in the region. It turns out the US is very much interested. And in fact, President Trump is touting the ceasefire as one of his very major diplomatic achievements. He was hands-on. He responded to the Indian SOS for ceasefire, and he was very positive when he equated the two. In fact, re-hyphenated India and Pakistan. So we are back in business. And one other thing which I would like to say in response to your question, Mr. Lavrov said in his speech, and I think it's an important thing. He said, and he accused the NATO of trying to stage a comeback to Afghanistan, despite the humiliating exit of 2021. So, which I think is quite an interesting remark. And so, which shows that, in his view, this area, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, Central Asia, Iran, this still is quite a center of strategic gravity for the global south. Thank you.
Senator Mushahid, excellent observations on, how Russia and China are responding to Quad, the new regional blocs, and then also how there may be some kind of alignment between President Trump's policies in the region and between Russia and China. But let me still press you. What is it that Pakistan cannot take for granted vis-a-vis Russia and China as it expands its relations in this new changed regional scenario, as you put it?
I think one key component of this change in regional scenario is that Pakistan has got strategic space. This region, the Iran-Saudi rapprochement means that the Iran-Saudi proxy war is no longer there, number one. Number two, the United States is not physically present in Afghanistan as it was before. So that's not a factor. Number three, Modi is, for the first time, isolated in South Asia. Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, Sri Lanka. Bangladesh student revolution has taken away the pro-Indian government. Sri Lanka has a leftist government. Nepal has a Maoist government. And the Maldives government under President Moise, they based the election India out of Maldives. So that's another very important element for Pakistan. And Pakistan-China relations remain rock solid, while at the same time we have a very good rapport with the Trump administration, and the Russians are willing and eager to do business with us, depending that if we are willing to reciprocate, which we didn't do in the past, but I hope we'll do it now. So I think given that context, there is this autonomy that we've got, and we have got now suddenly better relations with both Iran and Afghanistan, two of our Western neighbors with whom we had some difficulties in the recent past. So given that context, Pakistan has more room to maneuver. And I think that, yes, the Russian-Chinese alliance is a new element, which I think is a plus for Pakistan, because Russia is now very closely aligned with China. And I mentioned in my article, which I wrote yesterday, it's called From Russia with Love. I'm a movie buff, so I like James Bond movies. And in that article, I mentioned that the attempt to wean away Russia from China by the Trump administration won't work. It's not going to happen because Putin and Xi Jinping are almost like blood brothers now. And they share a common vision and a common view of what they call the Eurasian heartland as being the center of gravity for the emerging global south as an alternative worldview to the decline and unraveling of the Western-led post-World War II international liberal order.
Madam, I know that you also want to jump in on this, fresh new friendship between Russia and China in the wake of American military retreat from the region and how it opens up opportunities for more assertive Russia and China. You will comment on that, but let me again bring you back to the question of China and India. I mean, let's face it, especially in the context of US administration's growing importance on the question of trade. China is India's second biggest trading partner. They had a bilateral trade volume of $128 billion last year. India's trade deficit with China is a record $99 billion. The dependency of Indian economy on China is growing. Now, considering how much importance America is giving to trade, China, it's an economic power. It projects itself as an economic power. Do you think Pakistan can take the Chinese-Indian trade interdependency for granted? What are the risks here vis-a-vis Pakistan's own security calculus?
As far as India-China trade is concerned, you yourself said that it is very heavily, the trade balance is with the Chinese, because they export more and there's very little coming from China. So naturally, they are in a very good position. And the Chinese and the Indian economy at this time is struggling, because I will tell you why I feel that it is struggling and will come under more pressure. Because if you've heard what Mr. Trump said yesterday, that if you do not stop buying arms from the Russians, then you will face 500% tariffs. I mean, yes, of course, that may not be practically possible, but there is that frustration with Indians, because what I wanted to initially add was that as a result of the Pahalgam incident, or the Pahalgam or the Indo-Pakistan conflict, India has been completely exposed, because I feel at this time both the USA and the Russian feel that they have been double played by the Indians. So the confidence of these two powers in India is at the moment, India may be important to them, but it is wavering at the moment. And that is why you will see that while US will continue to support the Indians, they will continue to pump in new equipment, military equipment, and everything. But I think there is a newfound interest in Pakistan, and a newfound
Yes.
attention that the Russians are giving to Pakistanis. That one of the elements, of course, is because Russia and China are now very close friends, and we are in this strategic partners. So we are in that triangle now, and we have been wanting to improve our relations with the Russians for a very long time. But at this moment, there is also another element. So the Russians, why were the Russians neutral? Because the Indians turned around and said in the Ukraine war that, we are neutral, we are non-aligned. So they said, okay, you are non-aligned there, then we are non-aligned here, And we saw the same thing with Trump. When Mr. Moody went, he said, we only import 10 billion worth of goods from India, while India sort of gets about 100 billion. So you owe us 90 billion. So you stop buying arms from the Russians and you buy from us. And that is where you saw that big agreement where a lot of arms are now being bought from where, of course, Russia is also not comfortable. Now, we also must remember that there is a very important element that is emerging, other than, of course, the Saudi and the Iranian rapprochement. There is a new trilateral mechanism that is now coming up, hopefully, with Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China. Because I think of all the shocking things, the most shocking and unexpected was to see the three foreign ministers in Beijing. That was Beijing's initiative. And I think that has made a lot of people in the world go back to the drawing board. And in addition to that, it's not only that it's the Chinese and the Pakistan and the Afghans, in which, of course, the Russians are also very interested to have this region in peace and wean them away from the Americans. But there is also the Central Asian states, which the Indians think are their backyard, and we've been trying to woo them very, very passionately. But we saw that the Central Asian states are more inclined towards Pakistan than towards the Indians. And we saw the same thing with some of the Gulf states as well, although they are still sort of more tilted towards the Americans. So I think the whole region is South Asia. Already Mr. Senator Mushahid Hussain has very effectively explained. So I think at this moment, the entire environment is favoring Pakistan. But as I will quote Mr. Senator Mushahid Hussain, he ended his article by saying that let us not be known for missing the opportunities, that arise. So this is a huge opportunity for Pakistan, economically, politically, militarily, strategically. And I think we should now get out of this mode of celebration and bravado and sit down and talk to our partners very, very in a sober manner, and also take this opportunity of this rare internal unity to settle our own internal issues and give the youth a new vigor, a new vision, a new, dynamism. Because unless you do that, and unless you rectify your economy and put it back on the right track, this advantage that we have now, it will not last forever. Right now, we have the captive attention of USA, of the Russians, of the Chinese, of the Europeans. Europeans also remained neutral in here. They did not support India in this at all. So therefore, I think the opportunity for Pakistan on all fronts is great. You talk about trade. Now that is altogether a new ball game. Uh, India has a huge benefit of having huge manufacturing base and capacity. Pakistan does not have. That is why I personally feel that talking more about trade, we should talk more about investments. So when we're talking to the Americans, to the Europeans, to the Chinese, and to the Russians, we need to develop our own capacity so that we can benefit from the trade offers that are coming. So because if you
Thank
have
you.
nothing, it might be difficult. So as
Thank
far
you.
as China, just last sentence, as far as China and India are concerned, I think if things become difficult, China definitely has the capacity, if it wants, to de-link economically from the Indians, because the Indians will suffer more than the Chinese.
Thank you, madam. We've also got Ambassador retired Zamir Akram joining us now. Ambassador retired Zamir Akram, a veteran Pakistan Foreign Service diplomat, having held very important positions in the United Nations, in international organizations in Geneva, Russia, India. Sir, welcome. We are very glad that you could join us, even if a little late. We have Senator Mushahid Hussain Syed and Ambassador retired Naghmana Hashmi, specifically addressing the India-Pakistan calculus vis-a-vis the new superpower dynamics of Russia and China in the region. Ambassador Zamir, I want to bring, given your expertise on nuclear weapons, disarmament, multilateralism, I want to bring you in specifically on the question of nuclear deterrence. Our region is a powder keg of nuclear capabilities between Russia, China, India, Pakistan, Iran. But it was the US which intervened during Pahalgam and was able to broker a ceasefire. Now, in your view, how real is the nuclear conflict in the region? And do you see any deliberate role by Russia and China to manage India and Pakistan to prevent a nuclear war, as in being more proactive than they have been? Ambassador Zamir.
Thank you so much. First of all, I apologize for joining late. I had some technical problems accessing this site, so I apologize. Now, specifically to your question, I think that maintaining nuclear deterrence and strategic stability is essentially a role that the two contestants or the two opponents, that is Pakistan and India, must ensure. Yes, when we get to a position where, in the absence of any bilateral mechanism for crisis management and conflict resolution does not exist, as is the case presently between Pakistan and India, then there is a propensity for outsourcing this role to countries like the US or others. Now, in this particular instance that we have just witnessed during May, it was the Indians that sought the involvement of the United States and indeed even that of the Chinese after they had conducted their aggression and Pakistan had yet to respond. And first, they made this offer themselves, and then they took up the American offer. But if you go back if you look at the sequence, initially, after the Pahalgam incident, until the Indian response had taken place, the US position was that this is a bilateral issue and these two countries should resolve it amongst themselves. So, what changed the American position? I think the reason was that it was the kind of robust response that Pakistan undertook. And according to some media outlets, it was also because of some dangerous signaling, which is perhaps a reference to the fact that there were reports that our National Command Authority meeting had been convened, which was again denied. So I'm not sure what exactly happened, but the fact is that that was the messaging, or that was the signaling that was probably received in New Delhi and Washington, which activated the response. Now, this is an extremely dangerous environment where we are going to depend on some kind of third party involvement in future, because there is no bilateral mechanism to address this problem of crisis management. This is extremely dangerous. In this regard, I think that as Senator Mushahid has mentioned, the Russians played a role, and so has Ambassador Naghmana Hashmi, that the Russians were more or less neutral. This is something that knowledgeable Indians have also noted with some concern, because they were expecting unqualified, wholehearted support from Russia for India's position. That didn't happen. On the other hand, we saw the kind of completely unabashed or a unvarnished, clear-cut support for Pakistan that we witnessed from our friends in China, which sort of underscores the importance of this strategic partnership. And I would say that in the long run, strategic stability in this region will have to involve China as well, because China now, as the Indians themselves have admitted, it is not just a problem for India and China. India and Pakistan is also a problem between India and China. So this is the new reality, or this is the reality which has come to dawn upon this region, and particularly on the Indian leadership after what just happened. But going forward, I take the point that we need, and I want to underscore the same point that the other two speakers have made, that we also, despite the challenges, we also have tremendous opportunities for Pakistan to develop its partnerships in this increasingly changing global environment, including with the United States, which until the Biden administration was around, it was not a possibility. But under the Trump administration, there seems to be some possibility for whatever reason that we can go into. But the fact is that the Biden administration is taking a position towards this region and towards India and Pakistan, which can hold out the possibility of a more positive role by the US, shall we say, in promoting strategic stability in South Asia.
Thank you, sir. Mushahid Saab, I'm coming to you now. Madam Naghmana made an excellent point about China becoming more and more assertive, especially in Afghanistan, in the regional politics. Zamir Saab made an excellent point about this tacit outsourcing of the mediation role to the United States, because there's no active existing bilateral or regional mechanism in the region. I want to come to you, sir, and at the risk of being a little provocative, this absence of a mechanism within the region, in my view, is because hitherto Russia and China have not played over the decades the kind of regional power role they could have, should have, would have. And again, back to my question, with the US retreat from, a hot conflict approach vis-a-vis foreign policy, are we really looking at a deliberate role by Russia specifically on some kind of a mediation role between India and Pakistan, especially when it comes to nuclear conflict? And you talked about the Quad. We have the other blocks like SCO, like BRICS, but the conversation doesn't really fly off. It doesn't really take off because of the heavy US presence when it comes to mediation role. So, what are the realistic prospects moving forward on Russia and China and the mediation role? Sir, Mushahid
Thank you. I think that you mentioned about the absence of any Chinese or Russian role. Let's look at the region. We are talking in 2025. For the first 21 years of the 21st century, the Americans were right next door in Afghanistan, the so-called war on terror. So it was in conflict, the US was there, and finally they have had the retreat after August 2021. Then the area opened up. And now you can see that China has been playing the role of a bridge builder, whether it's Iran and Saudi Arabia in 2023, whether it's the 14 Palestinian factions whom China hosted last year in Beijing, or whether now, as Ambassador Hashmi mentioned about the trilateral hosting of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China. So, and let me tell you that when I was in Beijing, I met the Minister for International Development of the Communist Party of China, who's very close to President Xi Jinping, Liu Jianqiao, who had also come to Pakistan. And in response to what I had said, that I have always maintained that China is also a South Asian power. And he's mentioned that specifically, that China's role is in the region, and China is also a South Asian power. It's not determined only by India and the other SAARC countries. So that's a very important, significant change, that China now is very proactive here. China is building bridges, and China is, to quote Ambassador Zamir Akram, a factor for strategic stability. And they feel that this effort by the United States, because Quad is different than SCO. You mentioned the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Quad is a military alliance. It's an anti-China alliance. SCO is not against any country. So there's a qualitative difference between the American-led security alliances, the Indo-Pacific strategy against China, Quad against China. So Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, or other such similar initiatives, or Belt and Road Initiative of China, are not against any third country. They are to bring everybody together. So there's a qualitative difference. I would say that Russia and China both have a very key stake in maintaining stability, but they will not be liking the role of, say, any country like India to play a role at the behest of Washington to counter or confront China in a new Cold War. That would be unacceptable both to China as well as to Moscow. That is why I said that when I was in Russia, I got the vibes for the first time of Russian disillusionment about, Ambassador Hashmi rightly said, the double game that India had been playing, telling that, oh no, we're just cooperating on the economic front with the West, but actually they are very much a partner of the American regional strategy, which is, and in any case, unraveling. And yesterday's election in South Korea means that the Indo-Pacific strategy, one important leg of that has collapsed, because you have a liberal left of center government now in South Korea, which is not going to play a ball at the American behest. So I think the opportunity is very much there. India is on the defensive. And I think we also need a regional reset on three counts: our relations with Russia, our relations with Iran and Afghanistan, and our focus should be more on the smaller states of South Asia, who are natural allies and partners. Again, I repeat, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Maldives. Because our focus is only, it's either Washington or the West, or Saudi Arabia, or sometimes in Beijing. But this area, the region where we are located, where we have interest and where we have a lot of goodwill now, that I think we have not been able to cash in effectively. We need to do that. And I think then the sky is the limit for cooperation. And we can certainly look forward to a mediation which comes from within the region. Remember, Trump himself is driving America's South Asia policy. The American system, by and large, in my view, is very pro-Indian. It's infiltrated by Indians. It's pro-Indian. You have people in the American traditional security establishment, Pentagon, CIA, state, who are very much like the Biden folks. But Trump himself is different. He does not represent the traditional American security establishment. He is not from the deep state. He is not from the Washington playbook. So his approach is refreshing, at least for us. And he's not looking for banking on allies like India or the NATO or the Europeans. He feels that it should be bilateral, it should be transactional, give and take, and also business oriented. He's not a cold warrior. He wants an economic perspective, which is quite similar to what China also wants and what Russia would like also. So that's why they are willing to do business with him. Thank you.
Senator Mushahid, that's an excellent remark by you, that President Trump is not a cold warrior. And, you know, the excellent panoramic reset blueprint that you frankly put on the table in these last couple of minutes, probably that is the shift that we are moving towards now in the region, moving finally from a Cold War paradigm. All due respect, it continued even after the Cold War, and maybe towards a new, more region-centric approach where resident powers and resident countries are expected and have the wherewithal to play a more assertive role. I'm very mindful of the time. We are coming towards the end of our webinar. I want to give a quick 3 minutes, cumulative 3 minutes to Zamir Akram Saab and to Ambassador Naghmana on any final concluding thoughts on emerging opportunities for Pakistan in what Senator Mushahid sees as a regional reset. Zamir Akram Saab, very quickly, any final thoughts? You're muted, sir.
Sorry. Can you unmute me, because I can't seem to be.
We can hear you now, sir.
Okay, so I just want to express my complete endorsement for what agreement with what Senator Mushahid Hussain said about our regional outreach. And I would just say that we should expand the canvas beyond South Asia to include Central Asia. Because Pakistan is a kind of, as you can tell, it's a pivotal state. And geopolitically, it's positioned to play the role of a bridgehead between South, Central, and West Asia. So together with the countries of South Asia minus India, which doesn't want to be a part of what we do, and bringing together our Central Asian neighbors, including Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, and the others, and the other stans, and involving both the major powers, the Chinese as well as the Russians, in this overall endeavor. I think that this is a kind of looking at in other words, a broadened SCO, if you will. So this is a kind of level at which we should be looking at and pursuing our geopolitical objectives and Pakistan's strategic interests.
Ambassador Naghmana, you have the final word.
Actually, I think we've had a very good discussion. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, I think it's a God-given opportunity. We were, always had to face this, that India will isolate us and we are diplomatically isolated and sanctioned and this, that, and the other. But the tide has changed. We are not isolated now at all. We've become relevant to everybody once again. And like always, let us not squander this opportunity away, because at the moment, if you talk regionally, then what India used to consider its backyard, the other South Asian countries, I think they're more emboldened first, but because of the economic, geo-economic policy of China, and now by the strength and resolve of Pakistan as a strong country. And of course, Afghanistan, if it can be weaned away from the Indian influence, and I think China is trying to do that and should be successful, then with Central Asia and West Asia and South Asia, I think we can do away with a lot of negatives that come with India being a member of SAARC and he doesn't let it, it doesn't let it SARC progress at all. And that is exactly the tragedy with SCO also. SCO cannot move forward on anything because decisions are taken by consensus, and India is a part of that. So I think we will have to go beyond these settled organizations and find innovative ways of connecting Central Asia, West Asia, and South Asia minus India in order to really have peace and prosperity in this region.
Some excellent visionary outlooks coming from Ambassador Naghmana, Senator Mushahid, Ambassador Zamir Akram, and I want to conclude this discussion on this very pertinent, correct observation by Ambassador Naghmana that perhaps Pakistan's crisis of irrelevance is finally over. In the wake of America's ostensible military retreat from active conflict, new spaces have opened up for Russia, China, and Pakistan to play a more dominant role for regional peace and stability, as our discussion has proved today. And interestingly, this is also in sync with President Trump's approach towards the region. I thank our speakers, Senator Mushahid Hussain Syed, Ambassador Naghmana Hashmi, Ambassador Zamir Akram, for their invaluable time and participation in our webinar today. Stay tuned, and until next time, have a good day.